Good evening. The Fort Wayne Police Department employs at least 8 officers who are currently violating the city's mandatory retirement law. 2 of the 8 violate the state's retirement code as well. One is in his 70s and the other in his 80s.
It came as a surprise to lots of you when we broke the story yesterday. Tonight, 15 Finds Out takes the question of mandatory police retirement to Indianapolis. We are taking a closer look at why this law is even in place and how leaders at the state capitol treat it. Adam Widener continues our series of special reports, Too Old to Patrol.
The mandatory retirement violations were surprising to Bruce Henry as well. He's the Director of Human Relations with the Indianapolis Metro Police Department and says it's unusual to find officers who are 70 plus even wanting to stay on the force. But also enforcing this law is perfectly legal and good for staffing.
It's a rare occasion. It doesn't really come up as often as you might think.
What Bruce Henry describes as rare in Indianapolis is a reality in Fort Wayne. 2 officers are currently over the age of 70. It's a direct violation of the state's mandatory retirement code. 15 Finds Out discovered at least 6 officers in their 60s. That violates a stricter Fort Wayne law, which says officers must retire by age 60. If you think that sounds like age discrimination, the federal government would disagree. Here's Fort Wayne labor and employment attorney Scott Hall.
The Federal Age Discrimination and Employment Act has a niche cut out for public sector, public safety, fire and police personnel, which allows mandatory retirement ages.
With most other professions, the Age Discrimination and Employment Act makes mandatory retirement against the law. But when it comes to law enforcement and fire departments, the law makes an exception. Local and state governments can't set a mandatory retirement age so long as it's no younger than 55. Henry thinks the law is designed for the obvious physical reasons, but he also agrees with a union leader in Fort Wayne that it should help staffing.
In order to get new blood into organizations at times, that has been the prevailing acceptance and wisdom as it relates to officers and firefighters transitioning in and out of agencies.
Here in downtown Indianapolis, I asked the city's Director of Human Resources what he would do with a capable 70-year-old who still wanted to be on the police force. He says he would try to find a different place for that officer to serve in public safety, but definitely would not violate the mandatory retirement code.
We would not do that.
Indy's mandatory retirement age reflects the state's 70-year-old barrier. Henry personally thinks skills tests are a more effective way to gauge and enforce retirement. Still, he says for a police agency held to high standards, there are much better options than simply ignoring the law.
If we have a case whereby we believe that the law is outdated and we can prove that the winds of change are more on our side than against us, I think that's the opportunity for them to come together, revise that code, and present that for approval by their local body. That's what we would attempt to do here, I would hope, and that's what I would advocate for them doing in Fort Wayne.
Once again, the city of Fort Wayne couldn't give me a clear reason why it hasn't been following the mandatory retirement law, but it says it's been that way for almost 30 years. New tomorrow, thanks to our investigation, the wheels are already in motion toward changing Fort Wayne's mandatory retirement code. You can hear what a couple city councilmen have to say about it as 15 Finds Out continues our series of special reports on the mandatory retirement violations. In Studio 15, Adam Widener, News Channel 15.